Hello friends, happy Thursday. We are back for another quick chat where I'm just sharing some stuff that's been coming up lately for myself and clients and additional tips along the way. So I am going to get this shared, and then I want to talk today about getting behind yourself even when you don't feel like it, and what that means and why it is important. So if you're joining us live, please say hello, post a comment below, and we will get started. So the reason I'm talking about this, aside from the fact that it's been a theme, right, is that this tends to be one of the biggest challenges and or excuses that I hear from some of my clients regarding mindset, right? Where it's so easy, hey Lisa, thanks for joining, where it's so easy for us to do the thing, have the belief, get behind ourselves, feel the good feelings, do all of that stuff when things are good. But then when we're tired or when we're challenged or when things don't look like they're working out, it feels a little bit like we just don't feel like doing this stuff. Like we don't feel like doing the mindset work. We don't feel like doing the thought work. And the thing that we really have to understand is, yes, those good times build momentum and they help us kind of create what I call the new normal for the good stuff. So life is good, we're at peace, things are working out, money is flowing, relationships are good, and it's easy to feel really good in those moments. And that's amazing. And I encourage you to milk those moments, engage in those moments, feel gratitude in those moments, and really expand them as much as possible. And I want to encourage you to get into the habit and the practice of getting behind yourself even when you don't feel like it. Even in those moments when life is, seemingly falling apart and you physically don't have the energy. Mentally, you're thinking, I don't know if I can do this. I don't know how I'm going to move forward with this. I really just don't feel like doing the positive affirmations. I don't feel like doing the journaling, right? And so I want to talk about those things and what getting behind yourself in those particular moments really means. So when I'm talking about getting behind yourself, what I'm talking about is what I've often referred to as the mindset triage pieces. So a challenge comes up, you have an argument with someone, you don't get the job that you wanted, you just are in a funk, you have one of those days because we're human and we have those. And when those things happen, our mind and our energy tends to be a little bit lower. Our energy is, lacking. Maybe you're feeling grumpy, you're feeling frustrated, you're feeling whatever feels are coming up. And then your mind is going to that place that it goes because it's easy to go to that place that it goes when things are rough, right? I can't do this. You're worrying, maybe you're doubting, maybe you're chewing on all of these things like, how do I fix this and what's wrong? And just basically making the issue and the challenge bigger in your mind. And so in those moments, not immediately, because we're human and we have to feel what's coming up, right? We have to process those things. But eventually you need to be able to get into a place where you can get behind yourself despite how you're feeling. And I talked about this in a call that I did last night about how when we're in those moments, and in that instance we were talking about anxiety and we were talking about depression and worry and kind of those feelings. Those aren't the times that you're going to do the affirmations. And maybe you try to do them, but they don't necessarily work. When you feel broke and you're saying, I'm rich, those two things don't jive, right? When you're feeling frustrated or in chaos and you say, I choose peace, those two things don't jive. So how do you get behind yourself? If you're not using the affirmations, what is it that you can do to shift and change that dynamic and that feeling and that vibration, regardless of, how you feel, right? And so what we talked about was really addressing the feeling thing first. The mindset piece is important and it will come, but you have to address the feeling piece first. And so this is going to be potentially very unique for you. It's going to be an individual, practice for you. But the question is, what do you do to process through the feels, process through that emotion, to, as Abraham says, work your way up the emotional scale? How do you get to that place? So how do you go from anxiety to peace? Well, you don't make that leap because it doesn't happen instantaneously, as much as I would love for that to be the case. So you kind of have to work your way up slowly. So what does that for you? For me, it is often distraction. When I am in work mode, I am distracted from my stuff, unless my stuff is involved in work, right? But 9 times out of 10, if I've got life stuff happening, then I can jump on a call with a client. I can do a video with you. I can start writing my book. I can do things that are in this space, and I automatically go to a different place. It distracts me. It shifts my thinking. It changes my energy completely. Something else that's helpful for some people is meditation in those moments. Personally, that doesn't work depending on where I am emotionally. So if I'm anxious or I'm frustrated, or I've just, had a whole chaotic thing or had an argument with someone, meditation isn't going to be the thing that works for me immediately. Maybe a little bit later, but immediately it's not the thing, right? Getting outside is also really helpful for me. I tend to do one of two things. If I'm in that anxious, emotional state, I will work out. Sometimes I'll jump on the treadmill and just play music or play something, in my headphones and just go. I'll get outside. I'll do some cleaning, furious cleaning, to just process through the energy of that moment. Okay. And I know this sounds a little bit crazy because I am a mindset coach and I talk about mindset all the time, but we have to understand that in those moments when we are triggered, when we are going through something, emotional, we're having that emotional response, it's not the time to go to those positive affirmations and to go to trying to be zen and trying to get back to that, everything is possible and this is an amazing life and pure gratitude. And I assume that for some people that works, but for the majority, it doesn't work in those moments. So you got to process the residual emotion and energy that comes up in those triggering moments, right? You got to do that first. But when we're talking about getting behind yourself, even when you don't feel like it, let's talk about those moments where, and I had one of them today, where maybe you didn't have the greatest day yesterday, or maybe something happened before you went to bed, or you had a conversation that didn't sit well with you, and you get up the next morning and you're just not feeling yourself, right? You just don't feel like jumping into that practice, that daily practice, whatever that is. It's easy to not do that thing. It's easy when you are low on energy, tired, frustrated, or just kind of, on the tail end of a challenge, to go do that positive thing that's going to make a difference. And sometimes it's not even the tiredness. It's just, you just don't feel like doing it, because we're human and that's what happens sometimes, right? But the power and the purpose behind doing it even when you don't feel like it is you're setting an intention, you're creating a habit, you're setting this practice in motion that this thing is important to you. Whether you feel like doing that thing or not, that dynamic, that thing that happens after this action is important to you. And because it's important to you, you're choosing, and I use that word very, intentionally, you're choosing to do that thing because you know how it's going to not only make you feel afterwards in this moment, but you know what's going to happen in a compound way after you do it day after day after day. Okay? So one of the things I tend to hear from clients is, one of the first questions I'll ask when they're having a challenge is, when was the last time you did your practice? When was the last time you really got behind yourself? When was the last time you did the self-care, the mindset stuff, right? The energy work? And they'll say, oh, I just haven't really been feeling like it. And I'm like, those are the moments we really need to. Because mindset, remember, is twofold. It's doing the things in the moment when we're feeling good and things are flowing. So that daily practice. And then what I call mindset triage is doing the things reframing the thoughts, creating the shifts, even when things aren't working out or even when you don't feel like it. If you only did the things when you felt like it, how many of us are going to get anything done, right? And mindset is one of those things that is so important. It's so important when it comes to what we're creating, what we are experiencing, okay? So the best way to get into this practice of doing it even when you don't feel like it, there are a couple of reminders I want to give you. Number one is the more often you do it in general, the easier it's going to be to continue. Okay, this is just a habit practice. Your thoughts are habits. So for me, when I think about my workout, I tend to do that even when I'm tired and don't want to get up in the morning. I didn't do it today, but I gave myself a rest day, right? So even in those days where I know I'm tired, I have developed a practice that I know when I do it, despite this short-term moment where I don't feel like doing it now, I know that when I do it, even if it's not perfect, even if my head is not there 1,000%, that after the fact, I'm gonna feel so much better. I'm gonna feel so much better because I did it, because I attempted it, because I followed through with that habit, okay? So getting into the practice of doing it, no matter what, is going to be helpful. The other thing that I kind of alluded to already is thinking about being on the other side of it, right? So you may not feel like doing the stuff now. You may not feel like doing your mindset reading or your meditation or your yoga or your whatever that practice is for you. You may not feel like doing it. You may not feel inspired to do it, but how are you going to feel on the other side of it? Do you remember what that feels like? And again, sometimes it's not going to be perfect. You're not going to go from, zero frustrated and depressed or angry to completely happy-go-lucky. But I promise the little bit of time that you put into doing this and get behind yourself, get that belief flowing, is going to make a huge difference on the other side. Okay? And so this is, again, why I talk consistently and constantly about developing this awareness around what's happening in our minds. And I teach this work, I practice what I teach, I implement this work, and I am not perfect. And I don't expect perfection in this. I don't expect you to never have an off day, to never have a day where you just don't feel like doing it and you give yourself permission, because it happens, we're human. But I know the power that comes when we do this kind of work. I've seen it in my clients. I've seen the transformations that have occurred for them. I feel it in my own life, and I just know that it feels better, it is better, it's a whole other world when we get to the other side of that, okay? So before you do your next thing, before you go into that circumstance that might be challenging, or when you're not feeling quite like yourself, I want you to think about how can you get behind yourself even like in this moment. What are a couple of quick things that you can do, practices? Maybe it's jotting down a couple of things. Maybe it's, listening to some audio that really gets you thinking in a way that is helping you get behind yourself, right? But what are those things for you that you can do even if you don't have a lot of time, even if you don't have a lot of energy, okay? So start thinking about those things. And if you have questions about that, if you're not sure, if you still don't have a practice, or if you are curious about how all of this works in terms of, working through your specific things and you're looking for additional support, you always know where I am. I talk about this all the time. You can reach out to me on my website or here on Facebook or YouTube, okay? So that is my message for you today. Your desires, the life changes that you want to create, whether it's in your physical body, your finances, your career, your relationships, we really have to start shifting our thinking. And it's not about perfection. It's not about doing it perfectly every time, but it is about being willing to do it consistently. Because consistency and this whole concept called the compound effect, and there's a book that I definitely recommend called The Compound Effect, that kind of talks about this and the power of it. it really does matter and it adds up. And I can tell you that even in the last couple of weeks, in the conversations I've had with clients, that the compound effect is massive. The momentum that you build by choosing to get behind yourself in mind, energy, and action day by day, regardless of how you feel, is critical. That is an investment that you will not regret, I promise. Okay? So that is it today, friends. I hope that it was helpful. If you have questions, if you have topics, if you have things you would like me to talk about in a future video, feel free to post them in the comments below. Again, if you're interested in chatting about working together one-on-one, seeing what's available, feel free to reach out. At some point, I will be sort of temporarily closing new client enrollment. I don't know exactly when that will happen, but that will be happening in the next couple of months. So if it is something you're interested in and you want to chat with me about how we can work together, feel free to reach out, okay? If you are watching the replay of this, wherever you are on the interwebs, on Facebook, on YouTube, or wherever you find this video, I would love for you to post a comment below and share it with anyone that you think would benefit from it. Okay, hope you guys have a wonderful Thursday, a great weekend, and I will be back on Monday with another Mindset Monday live. Okay, have a great one. Bye.